camera. Well, hello. My name is Pete Hegseth. That is Jedediah Bila, and that is Will Cain. We're really glad you're here on this January 30th, 2021, year of our Lord, 2021. And guys, if we were predicting this week, I might have been able to predict that, hey, we're going to talk about executive actions because Joe Biden's done a ton of them. But you're going to predict that we're talking about COVID-19. I would not have predicted we're going to talk about GameStop last weekend.
No, that's a surprise, but don't let that fool you. It's a massive story.
It is.
And it's massively interesting, Jedediah. We're going to be diving into that today, as well as the governor of New York, whose victory tour has been interrupted, Jedediah.
Yes, we're gonna begin with Andrew Cuomo, our favorite governor, because there was a scathing report that was delivered this week. Many of you have seen it already with respect to nursing homes. That came from the Attorney General, from Letitia James, also a Democrat, important to note right from the start, who came out and said that nursing home deaths were actually undercounted potentially by as much as 50%. You heard that right. Check out the cover of the New York Post, which reads, "Who cares? They died." And let's look at some of the stats on that. New York nursing home deaths, 8,952. The AG nursing home investigation found that New York undercounted nursing home deaths, like we said, as much as 50%. Lack of compliance by nursing homes increased deaths, and insufficient PPE COVID-19 testing put residents at risk. Now, we've been covering this in great detail. Our friend Janice Dean has done some great work in exposing the flaws in terms of Governor Cuomo's leadership or lack thereof. And it's been horrific to see. And I think we're also in just a few seconds going to get his reaction, guys. But what's your initial take on what was disclosed this week? Pretty big numbers, 50%. That's no small number.
Yeah, this Attorney General is a Democrat. That number we put up, that 8,952 number, that is the official number. According to the Attorney General, that number could be north of 13,000. Right. So it's a much, much larger number. I mean, headlines like this, "Who cares? They died?" The backlash is real to that statement because this is the guy who made his name with these televised performances early on in COVID, saying, I'm the man at the helm. Here's our strategy. I'm going to shoot straight with you. We're going to follow the facts, just the data. Well, if you're following facts and data, then who cares? They died really does matter. How they died matters is how you make decisions going forward.
It's like a line out of The Sopranos.
It's crazy.
Whether a person died in a nursing home or a hospital, who cares? They died. Whether or not they were whacked or died of gross negligence or whether or not it was an accident, what's done is done. Who cares? They died. The governor of New York literally sounding like Tony Soprano.
Yeah, let's use the war analogy, which he used all the time, that we're battling COVID. That'd be like me as a platoon leader in Iraq being like, well, they sent my guys to war and a couple of them died. Who cares how they died? I mean, they went to war, right? So the insanity of the statement and so he tried to defend it even more yesterday because he's under a lot of scrutiny finally about this terrible policy decision. Here's Governor Cuomo attempting to rationalize the idea that he decided to put COVID-infected patients in nursing homes.
Where this starts is, frankly, a political attack from prior federal administration, HHS. If you think there was a mistake, then go talk to the federal government. It's not about pointing fingers or blame. It's that this became a political football. The report also says the information from nursing homes is often incorrect. It doesn't mean people didn't die, and it doesn't mean people won't die today. That is the curse of COVID. Why COVID? Why did God do this? I don't know. But who cares? 33, 28, died in a hospital, died in a nursing home. They died.
What you just saw is a man having an allergic reaction to responsibility. You notice how that went. Now, maybe it's God's fault. Mother Nature
blamed God
at the source of this. The Trump administration is potentially at blame as well. And now that the numbers suggest no, Governor, the responsibility lies with you. Hey, blame. It's a political football. Let's move on. And most, by the way, in the media were happy to accept his invitation. This is the coverage Andrew Cuomo's nursing home order and the respondent increase in deaths has received on your mainstream broadcast news networks. 0, 0, 59. ABC and NBC not finding it newsworthy, CBS giving it just shy of 1 minute of coverage when it comes to the responsibility now that his own Democratic Party in the state of New York is laying at his feet.
It's unbelievable. You can't lay it at anybody else's feet.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to me always here is that he gets a pass. Other people do not get a pass. I think Bill de Blasio does not get a pass. Even Gavin Newsom is starting to take a lot of heat for his lack of leadership in California. And I think the difference here is, and we talk about the cult of personality a lot, but I think that media types and people in general, when you take out Cuomo's leadership and his political role, they like him. They think he's a nice guy. They think he's fun. They like his sense of humor, his New York attitude. So he gets a pass on a lot of things. He doesn't have to own up and take responsibility. That's the one thing that you didn't see in that clip. There is no responsibility being taken by him at all. Like you said, it's everyone else's fault. And he has gotten a pass when many other politicians have not. Also important to note, like we said, the AG is a Democrat. So what is he talking about a political football? This is a Democrat saying these numbers are not accurate and basically saying to him, you are part of the reason why, explain yourself, and he's not doing it. But let's take a look back at some of the media praise of Cuomo's fantastic leadership on this issue.
New York's Andrew Cuomo has become an outspoken voice in this crisis with his blunt and sobering assessments.
You were there for us, and I go, oh, you're smart and you were honest.
You exposed a lot of your own vulnerabilities.
A very buzzed about topic about you is your love life.
You've been commended for your clear and your calm leadership.
Congratulations, Andrew, on your much-deserved Founders Award.
You and your brother Chris tied as the most desirable men in New York.
Is it true that this was the swab that the nurse was actually using? In scale, this was the actual swab that was being used.
That was going to be nice and sweet.
I just want a yes, no.
That is actual media coverage. Eli Lake, who's a columnist for Bloomberg, not a conservative, but a fair-minded guy, tweeted this, sort of putting a good point on all that kind of fawning coverage. He said, I think it's safe to say at this point, the Governor Cuomo conned the national media on his COVID leadership. He made a horrendous decision on nursing homes and then covered it up on the death counts. Shame on him, but also shame on the journalists who couldn't stop swooning. It's true. Talk about blame, Will, and that quote that we played. This is Andrew Cuomo. In October of 2020, I hold Donald Trump responsible for every death in New York State from COVID because Trump lied. He held Trump responsible for every death in New York State. Yet he then turns around and says, well, who am I supposed to blame? God? Mother Nature? I don't know. He also wrote a book on this, guys, you'll recall, October of 2020, called American Crisis: Leadership Lessons from COVID-19. Imagine if you'd spent just one iota of the time maybe analyzing the data as opposed to editing copies, because you know he didn't write it himself. We might not be in this place. But it's the scarier part, Will, is the numbers are so easy to manipulate. What do you count? Is it when you're in the nursing home, when you leave, were you there, were you infected there? And that leads to skepticism for all of us when you say follow the facts, just the data, follow the science. Well, what if all the data can be manipulated too? Then I can be manipulated.
You know, the only bone I would pick with Eli Lake in that wonderful tweet is that the national media wasn't conned by Andrew Cuomo. They were in on the con. They were part of the propaganda machine. It's the American people that were conned, many of which are walking around the streets of New York who still think that Andrew Cuomo did a great job and Ron DeSantis in Florida somehow mismanaged this pandemic. They believe the exact opposite of the truth. We now need to move to another major story we're following this morning, the GameStop trading scandal that Pete mentioned earlier. It's wreaking havoc on the stock market, the Dow alone dropping more than 600 points. Lauren Blanchard is live in Washington as the White House avoids saying whether it will take any action. Lauren?
Good morning, Jed, Will, and Pete. Well, Wall Street and Main Street still trying to make sense of this whole story. Friday, all three indexes suffered their worst day since October. Ortex is predicting $19 billion in short seller losses as of yesterday morning. Robinhood, along with other trading apps, are under fire for halting trades on GameStop and other volatile stocks, while big hedge funds were free to continue buying and selling. President Biden and the White House have dodged questions on whether the government will step in, telling reporters basically talk to the SEC.
They are closely monitoring the situation, but it's under their purview at this point in time. And I guess part of our education can be conveying to people that the SEC is the regulatory body that would oversee this and can speak to it further.
And the so-called little guy is also up against big tech, some of which have shut down chat rooms about Wall Street's wild ride. And Google is reported to have removed 100,000 negative reviews for Robinhood.
I don't want to do anything to damage the opportunity of individual folks, middle income, blue collar folks, to be able to participate in a big wealth generating machine, which is historically what the stock market has been.
And Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote a letter to the SEC. She said the whole situation shows investors, big and small, are treating the stock market like a casino. Jed, Will, Pete?
All right, thanks, Lauren. Pete, you giggled in the middle of that report at something that absolutely caught my eye as well. If you want to believe, if you want to understand how interconnected the system is, meaning those in power, financial, media, political, how interconnected all of these interests are, just look at the note that Google took down 100,000 negative reviews of Robinhood in the last couple of days. It was a 4-star company on Google reviews. Going into this news cycle, going into this event, it had been reduced to a 1-star company. People are obviously, righteously, very upset with Robinhood shutting down their ability to trade. And Google doesn't want others to know about it. It took down those negative reviews. The whole system is interconnected.
Yeah, and I think it's breaking down into people are feeling like it's those who have power and those who don't. And, you know, big tech is part of that. It's been a conversation we've been having for some time about power and influence, hedge fund managers, and so many people out there who are not in those positions financially or otherwise to have that kind of clout are saying, well, can they just overtake the entire system and dictate everything? Now it's not just, you know, influence and censorship, but it's financials that are getting involved. It's getting pretty intense, the division here, and people are feeling like they don't know what to do. They have no recourse. What do you do in a situation like this when certain trades are suddenly blocked for regular people? This was a really fascinating story to watch unfold. And Dave Portnoy, who has certainly done a lot for the business community around the country, we've been covering that in great detail. He talked about it on Fox and Friends on Friday on this Robinhood trading and pointed out some of the things that he found most egregious. Take a listen.
Nobody's given an example of in the history of the stock market where you actively just say to certain stocks, hey, you can only sell them, you can't buy them. There's no confusion on what that would do to those stocks. It would crash the price, and that's exactly what they did. And the people holding those stocks were the Reddit people. It was everyday people. It was normal 9-to-5 people who put their hard-earned money into these stocks because they're internet and they were aware of it. And they got cheated. These are people new to the stock market, and they got flat out cheated and robbed in plain sight to protect hedge funds. That's what happened. There's no other explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the revenge of the retailers who are not supposed to have that much power. And the reason I giggle at the Google review thing is that the reason 100,000 people don't like what Robinhood did to them, so they told Google about it. And then Google says, sorry, your opinion doesn't exist. Right. It's such a sham. So good for all these Redditors that took them on. And hopefully there's tons of investigations and a bunch of backdoor deals that expose the cronyism of this hedge fund system. We shall see. If we learn more, we'll bring it to you. All right, still ahead, President Biden signing off on a long list of executive orders in his first 10 days in office, including killing the Keystone XL pipeline and tens of thousands of American jobs. You're going to hear from a pipeline worker with 40 years experience who's now worried, well, about the future of the industry, and rightfully so, after the break.
I need a dollar, that's what I need.
11,000 jobs. That's how many potential livelihoods Joe Biden signed away with his executive order killing the Keystone XL pipeline.
Our next guest is a member of the Pipeliners Union 798, one of the 4 unions whose members are now out of work.
He's been a welder for 40 years and says the White House's promise of new jobs is ludicrous. Foreman Billy Burns joins us now. Billy, thank you for joining the show. We appreciate you being here. So your union had a contract, as I understand it, to do all of the welding on this project, or at least a large portion of the welding on the project. What has been the impact of this decision with respect to the Keystone Pipeline from the Biden administration?
Well, this job was pretty much going to be the massive work for our union this year. We were really counting on it. You know, you prepare for these large projects, and when one gets the rug yanked out from under it, I mean, you have nothing for that year, or you have nothing for the next 2 years, because we make plans to do this particular work And it is many million man hours that go into this project, and it pretty much kills everything we have going for the year or the next 2 years.
So, Billy, does that mean everything stops? You know, you've stopped immediately. The work is done. Contracts are done. Is there any residual? Is there any recourse?
Well, you know, a lot of the work we've been doing for the last few years have been in crude oil, and it seems like crude oil is under attack, and so we feel that our livelihood is under attack. And we knew that Biden was going to go after the fossil fuels, and that's really a bad day for the Pipeliners Local 798. We depend on that oil and moving and to keep our livelihood going, oil and gas, but oil in particular the last couple of years has been big percentage of the work we have done.
Hey, Bill, let's take a look at the projected jobs before construction is halted. 11,000 anticipated jobs, 8,000 of those union workers employed, $1.6 billion in expected gross wages. Really quickly on the mechanics of this, Billy, I'm just curious, the human factor. You expect those jobs to be coming over the next year or two. You expect that money, those wages to be coming in. The contract gets yanked out. You have to call your union members. You have to tell them, hey, it turns out you're going to be unemployed, it turns out, for the next 2 years. How does that work?
Well, it really hurts our benefits and stuff at our union hall. We have our own pension plans and health care, and the workers, the union our union is doing a great job. We've done great for the last several years, and this upcoming work, this Keystone, has been put off, for about 10 years, and it's today, this year it came. We were ready. We're actually working on it right now, or have been. A few workers, or not a few workers,
right.
Several thousand workers got laid off recently, and that was the early on progress that was taking place. And we were going in to lay the main line. Some of it has already been laid. It's in the ground right now already, right. and we were ready to go after it.
Well, Joe Biden has said, don't worry, I think it's John Kerry who said, you guys can learn how to install solar panels.
Yep.
So you got that going for you, I guess, right?
Yeah, the solar panels, that's probably not going to work for us. I mean, it takes us years and years to learn this trade, and we start from our early ages and all this, and it's a family thing. We have many great families that travel around and take care of these projects. We go into these cities and towns and boost their economies. I mean, we've saved businesses. Sometimes we'll go into town, and the hundreds of people, thousands of people come into these towns and small communities, and we've left at the end of the jobs. Yeah. And businesses have told us, man, you've saved our. I
believe that.
Our businesses.
Right.
Well, Billy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this. Obviously, this is an issue we're following very closely. We appreciate having you today. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, Governor Cuomo not too concerned after it's revealed COVID-19 nursing home deaths in his state may have been vastly underreported.
But who?
We are back with some quick headlines. A police officer killed during the violence on Capitol Hill will lie in honor in the rotunda. Officer Brian Sicknick died after he was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher. He will lie in honor for 2 days before being buried at Arlington National Cemetery. In a statement, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer saying Officer Sicknick, quote, helped save lives, defend the temple of our democracy, and ensure that the Congress was not diverted from our duty to the Constitution. Sicknick will be the third Capitol Hill officer to lie in the Capitol Rotunda. And Black Lives Matter is nominated for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize. A Norwegian lawmaker nominated the movement for, quote, raising global awareness and consciousness about racial injustice. The lawmaker brushed off the violence during the summer riots, writing in part, of course there have been incidents, but most of them have been caused by the activities of either the police or counter-protesters. The winner will be announced in October. Over to you, Will.
Thanks, Jedediah. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo brushes off the state attorney general's report showing nursing home deaths were underreported by up to 50%.
Everyone did the best they could. The State Department of Health followed federal guidance. So if you think there was a mistake, then go talk to the federal government. It's not about pointing fingers or blame. It's that this became a political football. But who cares? 33, 28, died in a hospital, died in a nursing home. They died.
Who cares? I know some people who might. Our next guests. They lost their 89-year-old father to the virus while he was a patient at a Brooklyn nursing home. In October, these brothers organized a mock funeral for Cuomo's leadership and integrity. And this morning, Daniel and Peter Arbini joined me with their response to his flippant remarks. Daniel, Peter, thank you so much for being with me this morning. Before we get to your response to Andrew Cuomo, would you just share for me the story of your father, how he got sick, where he got sick, and how this nursing home order affected your family?
Absolutely. My father was a vibrant, vivacious man, working, fully healthy and with his facilities. And he had gotten sick. Several things had hit him at once, unfortunately. And he was between the hospital and rehab, getting better to come home. And the last time he was put in the rehab center, we were very active in his care. We were very close as a family, thankfully. A couple of days before the March 25th order, the administration came to us and said, you have to take your father home. He said, the governor was forcing them to take COVID patients. And I was stunned, right? We knew what happened in Washington State, and we knew that any pandemic plan protects the most vulnerable. And we were stunned, but we said, okay. It took us, unfortunately, a couple of days because of negligence in the hospital and staffing shortages everywhere to get him home. He had to have a procedure. Once he had that procedure, we brought him home. Unfortunately, right before we brought him home, he had gotten this low-grade on and off fever, and we knew that that was an indication of COVID. We brought him home. We loved him as best we could, and a few days later, he died of COVID.
I'm so sorry to hear it. Now, your father is one of the number of New York nursing home rehab residents whose death was not coded as a COVID death. Now, the New York Attorney General has gone through and said that's incorrect. Here's what they've said. The New York undercounted nursing home deaths, COVID-19 deaths, by as much as 50%. A lack of compliance by nursing homes increased deaths. It included insufficient PPE, COVID-19 testing, all of that put residents at risk. So, Peter, when you hear Governor Cuomo say, who cares where or how they died, what is your response?
My response is that the governor's press conference yesterday was pretty awful, and that he did not take responsibility. And I would say, as a Democrat, I want to tell Governor Cuomo to stop blaming Trump for his own administration's lies. They lied then, they're still lying now, and he's defending a lie. I was called a right-wing Republican operative because I made this sign behind us, and we had a mock funeral because we knew the numbers were wrong. We knew they miscounted, and we knew that every day he went and said how low the nursing home deaths were compared to the rest of the country, it was a lie. We knew when he wrote his book, and the numbers that he put in his book were a lie. And all we want is the truth. The truth is the truth. But the truth is that the governor does lie. It's official. He needs to admit his mistakes. And it's not really believable to think that the Governor Cuomo, defended the March 25th order as a directive from the Trump administration, and he defended it for 6 weeks. Then when he rescinded the order, he lied for an additional 10 months. This is just about what the numbers are. It's about what the truth is. It's about government transparency. We needed transparency. We needed humility. We needed empathy. We needed an apology. My brother and I have been on national television 4 times asking for an apology. And as of yesterday, he's directed me as a Democrat to call Trump and ask for an apology for his order. It makes no sense to me, and I think it's a sad day for the Democratic Party in New York.
Well, Daniel, Peter, we're obviously very sorry for your loss. Appreciate your pursuit of the truth, and we'll see if that apology is forthcoming. Daniel and Peter Arbini, thank you for your time and your story this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up, the Dow tumbles over 600 points with stock indexes suffering one of their worst weeks ever in the fallout of the Robinhood trading scandal. But President Biden is still staying silent on the Wall Street chaos. So what should happen next? We'll discuss after the break. And now to the story that is shaking up Wall Street, Main Street, and even the big tech world. Social media traders say their chat rooms were disabled by sites like Facebook, and Google reportedly removes negative reviews for Robinhood.
You're not allowed to talk about it. Meanwhile, the GameStop stock scandal is wreaking havoc on the stock market.
But as our next guest warns, taking on the trading game can be risky. Rosecliff Capital CEO Mike Murphy joins us now to break down what you need to know. Mike, obviously this story has had a lot of intricacies and a lot of twists and turns. So what are the big takeaways for you?
Good morning. I think there's so much more to this story, but really it's not for me about the hedge funds, and it's not so much about the brokerage firms like the Robinhood. It's really about the individual people at home who are watching this huge move over the course of the last few weeks and hearing about people who are turning $10,000 into $500,000, and they're now rushing into names like GameStop. And a lot of times that doesn't end well. So I think for the retail investor, I'd rather see them investing and not trying to become traders or day traders. Because if you remember about 20 years ago, that ended with the tech bubble bursting. So I think it's really great to hear some of the stories and hear people making money, but you want people to not end up getting caught holding the bag.
Right. Mike, I think you make a good point. Somebody's going to get caught holding the bag. Somebody will lose money. But don't you think that a little bit undercuts what people understand about the current situation? In other words, many people jumping in understand this is untethered to the actual value of the company, and they're trying to send a message to hedge funds. In other words, it's not just for most of these traders, these retail traders, a get-rich-quick scheme. It's sending a message to Wall Street.
I think maybe it starts that way, but I push back a little bit because when these people are putting the money into their trading accounts, I think that the big messaging goes away and they're trying to make money. A lot of these pay off student loans or pay off a mortgage or buy a house. So I think it's great to get a message across to Wall Street that the little guy is standing up for himself. But I think that messaging is coming from a different place. I think ultimately the people who are in there and that are really moving the markets are there for the same reason that the Wall Street guys are there, and that's to make money.
Yeah, Mike, we'll see whether or not it's a good financial move. But when you hear that big tech is shutting down these chat rooms in places where, is there anything illegal about having a chat room and talking about what stocks you might want to buy? Why would they shut those down?
Yeah, I think what they're trying to do is just limit their liability from, again, they're in the business of making money. So they want to make sure that nobody's using their platform as a way to, pump up a stock and then maybe potentially have liability for it. But I think, it leads to censorship that's coming in from the big tech companies. And, people are in favor of it maybe, or some people were when that censorship was aimed at President Trump. But now if it's aimed at a Robinhood or if it's aimed at someone else, they don't like it. I hate the idea of any sort of censorship from big tech. And I'm a big believer in big tech. I'm an owner of big tech. I think they're innovating and they're a great place to invest. But I don't want to see them overstep their boundaries either. Any sort of censorship, I think, from the sites is bad.
All right, Mike, we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Turning now to your headlines. Former FBI lawyer Kevin Clinesmith is sentenced to 12 months probation and 400 hours of community service. Clinesmith pleaded guilty to making false statements to special counsel John Durham's investigation of the Trump-Russia probe. Prosecutors wanted him to serve jail time, but the judge said Clinesmith had already suffered by losing his job and being the center of
He changed the email.
Hurricane. Right.
Oh, my gosh.
When it comes to COVID social distancing bubbles, 2 recent Flaming Lips concerts in Oklahoma City take the cake. 100 capsules fitting up to 3 people each were front and center for the group's live performance last weekend. The band organized the socially distanced Space Bubble concert to keep the event safe but fun. Concert goers were able to dance and listen to music with a speaker in each bubble.
That's the worst thing I've ever seen.
And an unlikely friendship goes viral between a 4-year-old boy and a baby deer. This photo, posted by the boy's mother, Stephanie Brown, explaining her son, Dominic, went outside to play and came back with a fawn by his side. They were on a family vacation in their home state of Virginia. The moment capturing hearts online, with some saying he has a gift. And those are your headlines. It is pretty awesome. He just walked up with a fawn.
I think it means someone who lived there before them had been feeding the fawn.
I think you could be on to something, Heg said.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no special
Yes,
relationship
I have
there.
parents who feed all the animals in the neighborhood, and sometimes the neighbors don't love that. There's like cats, dogs, all sorts of furry creatures come to our area. So you may be right about that one. But what an adorable kid. Wow, kids and animals are just such a cute combo.
Be careful, though. That deer will give you chronic wasting disease.
That's true, and they also carry ticks. Right. So I learned that the hard way once. All right, Rick Reichmuth, do you have a pet deer or not?
No, I was just thinking Lyme disease is all I was thinking when I saw that one.
Yes.
But I know.
Yes, been there.
They poop in your lawn. They poop in your lawn.
And there's that. Hey, guys, is it cold enough for you this morning, this weekend?
Yes.
Yeah. I know. It's really cold. Coldest spot in the country right now across areas of the Northeast. It's also windy along with that. The wind chill making everybody this morning feel like the single digits at least. Feels like 6 in New York. Feels like -8 right now as you're waking up in Boston. 13 in Minneapolis. So we're colder across areas of the East Coast than we are in places across some parts of the far northern plains. An okay day today across parts of the East Coast. We have a lot of activity going on. I don't know if you've seen everything that's happened this week with the moisture into California. Incredible amounts of rain, incredible amounts of snow. That system now moving here across parts of the Central Plains. And this is going to be a slow moving system. It's going to bring a lot of rain. It's going to bring a lot of snow. Meanwhile, areas of Southern California and the Southwest getting a little bit of a break. We have more moisture coming in around 4 to 5 days, but we'll take a little break. Here's how this plays out throughout the day today into tomorrow. Snow from places like Chicago down through Pittsburgh, DC, maybe around 6 inches of snow by the time this is done. And the cold air that's already in place means eventually, say by Monday, we start to see the snow moving in across parts of the Northeast. All right, guys, back to you.
It's my favorite weather report ever. Yeah, I know. It's really cold.
Yeah. And Rick, I've heard
cold.
you say you're welcome for nice weather. You can't just take credit for the nice weather and not own the bad weather too. Don't be the Governor Cuomo of weathercasters. Okay? You take the blame
Some
too.
people love the cold weather. You're welcome for you people who love the cold weather.
There's a few out there. Rick, thank you very much. We love you. All right, still ahead. The Biden administration vowing to do more to help illegal immigrants in the U.S., but one lawmaker wants to help American citizens by letting the victims of crimes committed by illegal immigrants sue the sanctuary cities where it happened. That Congressman Ted Budd joins us live next. Well, with an immigration overhaul next on Biden's agenda, Republican lawmakers are taking a stand to protect American citizens, introducing legislation that allows victims of crimes committed by illegal immigrants to sue the sanctuary cities where that crime occurred. Our next guest calls it a matter of simple public safety. And bill sponsor, Congressman Ted Budd, joins us now. Congressman, thanks so much for being here. Explain to our audience what your bill would do.
Well, the main point is that if you enforce the law, then you prevent tragedies. The bottom line is that lawlessness leads to tragedy, and that's just not acceptable. So my bill simply allows victims of crimes that are committed by illegal immigrants to sue the jurisdiction that simply refused to follow the law. You know, if local officials want to allow dangerous people on the streets, then they should be legally on the hook.
So is it effectively an equal protection argument? You know, you live in the jurisdiction, yet people who don't have to follow the laws are there, a crime is committed. And is the hope that it would force mayors and others to, rescind sanctuary policies?
That's the ultimate hope, is that they realize, look, you've got to equally enforce the law and that you're on the hook if you don't. People depend on government. I mean, government is essentially how people determine to live together. And when you allow chaos like's been going on the last several years with the non-enforcement in these sanctuary cities, we have to protect the people that are vulnerable. I mean, if you think of the Kate Steinle case years ago, what a tragedy. She died in the arms of her father because a repeatedly caught and then released illegal immigrant, murdered Kate Steinle. And now that family and families like it around the country have to suffer those consequences.
And they had no recourse. You're looking to give them one. The problem is the man at the top right now used to be on your side on things like this. Now captured by the left, has a very different view. Here's Joe Biden on sanctuary cities, first in 2007 and now today.
So, Senator Biden, yes or no, would you allow the cities to ignore the federal law?
No.
Where do you stand now? Should undocumented immigrants arrested by local police be turned over to immigration officials?
No.
It's a total 180, Congressman. It's where the modern Democrat Party is today. I worry, you don't have the votes. How will the left react to this?
Well, look, the Democrats talk about unity, don't they? But what could be more unifying than protecting our communities?
Mm-hmm.
I would ask any of my Democrat colleagues just to think about the innocent victims. I mentioned Kate Steinle, but there's thousands of cases like this around the country. Think about the mothers and fathers. They say they're the party of the children, right, and the party of the future. But think about parents losing a child and the life that's been killed, and think about all that could be prevented. The American people need to know where we stand on this, and I think a bill like this is very timely. The American people want it. I just want to thank my colleague in the Senate, Senator Tillis, for his work on this. President Trump actually gave it a shout out during the 2020 State of the Union. But it should not be a partisan issue. I don't think the safety of our children and the safety of our communities should be a partisan issue.
It shouldn't be, but they find a way to make it so. The bill is Justice for Victims of Sanctuary Cities Act. Representative Ted Budd, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead. Johnson & Johnson is rolling out its new one-dose vaccine, but it may not be as effective as two-dose shots from Pfizer and Moderna. Dr. Nicole Saphier breaks down the pros and cons of each next.